Welcome to the Social Impact Level Up podcast. This is where we blur the lines between business, nonprofit, and impact. Social entrepreneurs in our community share their stories of how they are changing the world and building a legacy of health, wealth, happiness, and wellness. I'm your host, Wendy V, along with my co-host, Rodrigo Bravo. Together, we're social entrepreneurs building a collective of impactful humans who are going to make this world a better place. We hope you'll join us. Here's today's episode. Whenever we get a question from a community member, we always take it back to the community. That's what you hear in this episode. Rodrigo takes Jose's question and says, guys, what happens when we lose our motivation? This is one of my favorite episodes from early on when we really were still trying to get to know who are these people who are social entrepreneurs and exactly how do we navigate this world where we're helping others, and also we need to take care of ourselves. So today is our special room that Rodrigo is going to lead. I'm going to hang back, and this is going to be fun to see what happens here because I was not on topic for this week. Rodrigo and Jose selected the topic. So I think this is great. If anybody wants to select topics for future rooms, please reach out to me or Rodrigo or Santiago, and we'll be happy to schedule them and hold the conversation, hold the space for the conversation to be had. So today we're talking about motivation, and Rodrigo titled it Motivation, Where Are You? So I'm curious to know what we're going to talk about today when Rodrigo starts talking, but I'll turn it over to you, Rodrigo. And yeah, you can lead the convo today. I'll still ping some folks into the room.
Hey, that'll be great, Wendy. Thank you so much. And yeah, this is the Social Impact Level Up Club where we do talk about various topics. You know, a lot of times we are talking about money mindset and manifestation, kind of revolves around that, right? And one of the critical things is motivation. You know, what is motivation? You know, what's the difference between motivation and discipline? Where do we get that from? You know, what do we do when we don't have it? And I think that's one of the bigger questions, at least for me, it is because I do find myself, you know, having to do that, having to figure that out sometimes, especially when you don't have traditional challenges that maybe would inspire you. And what do I mean by that is, as entrepreneurs, as people that maybe work from home, work for ourselves, or we do work that doesn't necessarily fit the corporate structure, right? We kind of have a different approach towards work, and that motivation sometimes that we rely on in traditional structures isn't there. So, for example, right, I'm an entrepreneur now, right? I don't have coworkers, I don't have a boss, I don't have the social structure where I'm going to work and, you know, I get there, the water cooler talk and the interactions with folks and coming back home and this and that, right? The other thing is too, I don't have any of the bonuses, quote unquote. I don't have any of the, hey, we got a special project and we're gonna do this and that. So my motivation has been really hard to come by. I'm not gonna lie. I've always been very, very competitive, right? But I've never really been competitive with myself, and that's something that I've never really kind of looked at or understood or even figured out because I know that when I'm competitive with others, whether it's a simple game of Parcheesi, right, or whether it's you know being at work and making sure that I deliver top-notch performance and results for the company that I work for, right? I was always competitive because I always feel like, hey, I got something to prove. I'm going to be out there. I got somebody else, you know, and it first started as, hey, somebody else is going to take my job, right? The scarcity mindset, right? Oh my God, I got a job. I'm so fortunate to have a job. I better bust my ass because if not, somebody else is going to take my job, right? And then it kind of leads into other kind of motivation where like you say, hey, you know what? I want to do a good job. I'm proud of the work I do. You know, I want to show out for, you know, for my family, my friends, and this and that. And so when you're in those kind of those structures, it can be kind of easier, at least for me it was, to find that motivation. But then when you're an entrepreneur and you're on your own and you know you're figuring all this stuff out, not only just the logistics and the mechanics behind it and creating the structures so that you can be an entrepreneur, but what about the motivation? Where do you get the motivation? A lot of people make it real simple, right? Oh, my motivation is my kids. They, you know, they inspire me to do this and that. Okay, great. You know what I'm saying? That's fantastic. I have two boys. I love my boys. I am not gonna lie to y'all. My kids have never been my inspiration for working hard. Okay, I'm just gonna be straight up honest with y'all. No, I hear that all the time. I hear
I
that
know.
all the time. I hear that all the time. Oh, my kids. No, my kids have never inspired me to work. If anything, the reason I do work is because of my kids, because I want to provide for them. But to necessarily say like, hey, like, oh yeah, my kid. No, no, I don't. And again, I'm just saying my personal experience. Some folks may actually have that, and that's fine. But they say their kids, right, or their partner. I want to provide for my partner, and then this and that. You're gonna do that anyways, right? The way I feel about it is like anywhere I go, I'm gonna provide for my partner. You know what I'm saying? Then sometimes, like right now, I don't have a partner, right? So where's the motivation in that? So I think the basis of this discussion and what I really wanted to jump off was, where do we find that motivation when we can't find that motivation? Where we used to have maybe some motivation to do the work that we've done, and then all of a sudden it's either gone, our responsibilities have changed, maybe our outlook has changed. What can we really lean on when we're looking for that motivation when we don't find it? One of the things that I wanted to touch on before I go ahead and just kind of introduce Jose and Doc Rico, and I appreciate both of y'all being here with me today, with us today, is a Forbes article that I took that I checked out. And there was a study, and in this study there was about 44,000 people, around 44,000 people that participated in the study. And they tested kind of the self-talk and the imagery and the planning, where people kind of, talk about, maybe even just something as simple as looking in the mirror and say, hey, I got this, I'm ready for this, or I'm going to be confident, I'm going to do this and do that. And other folks didn't do it, right? It was kind of a control book. And what they did was kind of put different levels of self-talk, of talking to themselves and making sure that, you kind of visualize those things. And one of the things that the study found was that the folks that did do that, that they did do the quote unquote self-talk. They look at the mirror, and as corny as it may seem, they talk to themselves and they say, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna make it happen. That those were the highest performers. Those were the folks that actually, at the end of the day, they ended up having some of the top results when it comes to motivation. I'll go ahead and pin that link in a second right here, as soon as I'm done speaking. And so one of the tools that people have used is self-talk. Letting yourself know, visualize that. We've talked about before, Wendy, about like vision boards and writing things down on a list, right? And doing all that. And I think it goes down to manifestation, right? And so a lot of times when we don't self-talk, we let other people's what other people say, what other people may describe us as, or what other people's criticize us for, rule that, as opposed to our self-talk where we know what we're good at. So for example, right, a good example that I could share with y'all was when I was younger, back in the corporate world, right? I had just gotten promoted, and when I just gotten promoted, I had just gotten promoted from one totally different division into a brand new division. And when I got into that new division, a lot of the folks there in that division kept saying, "Oh, you don't deserve that promotion. You don't deserve this job. That should have been somebody else's job." And they kept saying that, right? And people kept saying that, and I keep hearing it. And oh man, this guy's been there for 30 years. He was the one next in line. You stole it from him, right? And I kept hearing that. And honestly, it started affecting me, right? Until one day, honestly, my partner was the one that helped me at that point. She said, "You earned this. You bust your ass off. You need to just tell yourself you got this." And when I started kind of telling myself that, and again, very corny, I'm not into the woo stuff that Wendy describes, stuff like that. I'm not into like this and that, but I started doing that. I said, no, I deserve this shit. I did deserve this. I worked my ass off. I'm nice. I'm kind. I've done the work to build up to this level. And when I started doing that, I also started expressing that to other folks. And one of the key changes that happened to me was when I changed my terms from being lucky to be here to being destined to be here. And I very, very clearly, when I made that change, when people would say, "Oh, you're just lucky to have this job," I go, "No, no, no. I was destined to have this job. This is where I'm supposed to be at this time." And just again, so that change, that framing of those words changes the whole philosophy of your situation, and you start, you know, believing in that, and you start getting that motivation from that. So that's just one study that I want to talk about. I'm going to pin the link, but I want to go ahead and turn it over to Jose and Doc Rico. Jose is he's the taco editor, the first taco editor ever here in the United States and probably around the world. But he is the taco editor for Texas Monthly, and he also does reviews for tacos and just overall a great guy. Jose, do you have anything you want to share right now as we continue this conversation about finding your motivation?
Yeah, it's been real difficult as you and I have discussed separately, because at the end of the year, I just burn out, and there's no one supervising me. Everyone goes on vacation, uh, and this year has been especially hard because the editor in chief, the big boss, told me it's my that he wants me to slow down, to just take care. There's nothing I have to prove, right? Which is great. Uh, Affirmational sentences. You know, I think everyone wants to hear you don't have anything to prove, even if they know they don't have anything to prove. uh, but my work ethic is to just, keep grinding, keep churning it out. So to just have really no quotas, as uh, has left me in a lurch. So now I feel like I'm kind of free falling, and I'd rather be on my couch watching Korean zombie stuff. But what I've started doing, uh, once again, is creating lists, because at the beginning of the pandemic, and well before that, when I worked from home, I'd get up at the same time, shower, get my breakfast, get fully dressed, and work from home. I mean, and create my list of tasks. Maybe that requires phone calls, a million emails, or writing. And then writing can be a frustrating thing because it's solitary, and you can put in a day's worth of work and throw it all away. uh, and so I was really good at just churning stuff out. But the pandemic took a toll on me, just like it took a toll on everybody. For the first year and a half, I ate the same breakfast, and I finally got sick of it. And but oh, and then I no longer was getting up at 6:30. I was getting up at 7:30, and my wife said, "Well, obviously, you need that sleep." I, for those who aren't aware, I have epilepsy, and that requires that I get a lot of sleep. Anyway, over the last few weeks, we've started to get me up at the same time, to shower, to eat, and not to spend my time kicking around the house. Uh, I've even taken stock of where is my time being most valuable, or, and that's why I cut the morning taco taco rooms here to twice weekly, and why I cut my show from the other audio app uh, to act as co-host for Isidro's show, and that is I want to manage my time, and my time at night needs to be my own so that I can separate my list and my family. It's working, I guess, but it's a hard slog. I don't think that there's ever a finish line, because if you stop, then you're dead, right? uh, that's it.
Now that's a great share, Jose, and it actually brought to mind 2 points. There's a very famous study regarding choice. It's actually called "When Choice is Demotivating." I remember reading this a long time ago, and I just pulled it up right now. And one thing that you just described right now was, your boss telling you like, hey, you don't have to prove yourself. You don't have any quotas. You just do your thing, right? And there's a thing. The reason I correlate the two together is because when you have too much choice, it can actually be paralyzing. It can, there's a thing when you give people freedom, it also comes with a lot of responsibility, and folks sometimes don't understand that. And so when Wendy and I, especially because our kind of trajectories this past year have kind of been similar in that we both became full-time entrepreneurs. I remember one time Wendy was saying, "Oh man, freedom to do as I please. I can go wherever I want and do this and that, right?" But with that freedom comes a ton of responsibility, much more responsibility than you would have if you were in a structured environment, at a corporate job or government job. And I think a lot of times folks that are not used to that, they experience like a little bit of a shift. It's really a mental kind of block, and you described it perfectly, right? I mean, if somebody were to describe that to you from the get-go and say, hey, look, you're going to be at a job, you're going to be, renowned, what I'm saying, on the local, state, national level, and guess what? You can do whatever you want. You don't even have to churn out work like that. Most people will say like, "Oh man, that sounds great," but then at the end of the day, all that freedom comes with so much responsibility. You're almost like, "Wait a second, now I'm doing things that I generally wouldn't do, and I do this and do that." So there is a balance to it, and I'm glad that you mentioned the second thing, which is structure. And we do have to create those structures, even when we do have tons of freedom. So right now you described like, your breakfast and you changed that up. And then, getting up and then finding out, what, I can't do or commit all this time to, a room in the mornings because quite frankly, that's not part of the structure that I need in order to, be motivating and get the work that I need to do done. So I really do appreciate you sharing that, Jose. And one last thing that I wanted to kind of mention was there's no one size fits all for any of this, right? And I think one of the key things we all need to realize is when we are going through our battles for motivation is our willingness to try different things. And I think, like you just alluded to right now, you are making, some changes. You're trying to do this, you're trying to do that. I think that's the key thing. Keep looking, keep going, keep kind of discovering. Hey, maybe this will work, maybe that'll work, maybe this, whatnot, whatever it takes to find that sweet spot between having that freedom but also making sure that you're responsible for the work that you're supposed to do, but also the motivation, right? Finding out where it goes. And you said lists earlier. I'm a big proponent of lists. I do lists all the time. In fact, lists are one of the tools that my son uses. My son is 17. He's in high school, and he was diagnosed with ADHD, and he's no longer taking any medication. But one of the things that I'm real heavy with him is our lists and routine and organization, and he needs that. Quite frankly, he does. That's not just an option for him. That's something that he needs. But I feel like a lot of people need that because it does provide that structure. And once again, going back to our money mindset and manifestation Mondays, this is what we always tell people: manifest that. And the way you manifest things is by adding physicality to them. So a list, a vision board, looking at a mirror and seeing yourself reflect those phrases and so forth. Those are all really important. So I'm really glad that you brought up the list portion right there, Jose. And again, man, thank you so much for being here with us and hanging out with us. Before I give it back to, introduce Doc Rico, just want to remind everybody we are in the Social Impact Level Up Club. Feel free to tap the little casita on the top. You know what I'm saying? Follow the club. We have discussions like these twice a week. This week, we're talking about motivation. Where are you, right? Our money mindset and manifestation. And this is the social impact level up club. Wendy generally takes care of those discussions, but this week I'm taking care of it and really wanted to touch on motivation and doing things to find that motivation and what do we do when we can't find it. So, Doc Rico, I know you were on the phone earlier, but it seems like you're back. How you doing,
Yeah.
sir? And what would you like to add?
Hey, Rodrigo. Thank you. Yeah, I was on the phone. Motivation, time. I think motivates me. Like, I have to get done a lot of things at a certain time. That motivates me to get things done. Um, I procrastinate. I'm a big procrastinator. I admit it. I should belong to Procrastinators Anonymous. I do make lists because I go down many rabbit holes sometimes. And then time when I'm like, oh my God, I got to do 5 things and I have no time. That motivates me a lot to get as much done. And so lists and lack of time get get things done for me. But sometimes you can't. You get older and you're like, I can't move as fast as I used to, mentally and physically. Um, so I try to get ahead as much as possible, and uh, and just see results. Results when something goes well, it's meant to do better because I'm like, oh wow, that's that. Like it's like when you play handball and you hit that ball in that sweet spot, and you love the way that hit. You're like, I want it again. It's sort of like a high. You do something, you get positive results. Oh, this is great. Whereas if you get negative results, like, oh, I don't want to do this again. This is like, you feel bad if you do something wrong. Like, oh, so I try to balance out between I got this is great results to where I'm gonna do this again. If I can do it again and replicate it over and over again, I get better and better results versus the reverse feeling. So that sometimes motivates me. Um, you know, if not, then external motivation sometimes works. My boss says, "Hey, we need to get this done right away," and I'm like, "I'm on it." And I love those challenges when they tell me like, "We need this done right away because something happened. And now we need to be on the ball." I'm like on it. It just I don't know, maybe because I used to do events, and events always hectic and crazy, and my brain runs 100 miles an hour. That motivates me. So sometimes if I am not challenged, um, I get like, oh, I'll get this done eventually. So um, time is my motivation, I guess. It's weird. I don't know if anyone ever said time is their motivator, but um, I think it is mine. But I need other things to motivate me on time. And
Yeah,
one thing you said, Rodrigo, that I really appreciate, you said, um, you know, people say, oh, you're lucky. And then you said, no, I was destined to do that. I've realized that those folks who do great things in their mind, they said, no, this is my destiny. That there's something about that word that I'm supposed to be here and this is my destiny or my calling that motivates people to get there versus, well, I kind of got lucky because then you don't know if you can repeat the process again to get to the next level, if that makes sense. And with that, I land my plane crash my car or whatever.
That's
We
so
say,
funny. Well,
Not
good, because
crash
you
your
were starting to go
car.
into the matrix, Dr. Rico. So can I jump in,
or
Rodrigo?
or
Go ahead with
enter
your
the
Sure,
point.
Wendy,
matrix.
but I want
In
to
my
make sure
case,
he
enter the
said crash
matrix.
his car. Wow,
What?
that's not motivating.
I'm
Don't
just
crash your
being.
car, bro. That's funny. Go ahead, Wendy.
I know. I'm just.
I'm glad hopefully you'll safely land and not crash your car. So yeah, I think Jose, you brought up a really good topic, and it's great to hear, people just share in this community the way that we do, because one of the things I was going to say that I find really motivating is community. I think having people to bounce ideas off of, or to get positive reinforcement from, or to just keep going with the creative process. I think even especially with writing, you can kind of get lost, as you said, in the drafts and get rid of a whole bunch of them and not get anything out, or you could have 50 drafts and still not get anything out. And I think it's difficult for all of us to stay motivated enough to be in that process of creating, and then also doing the other things that go along with it. And if you're not getting external motivation from your boss, maybe that's not necessarily the right community to give you that motivation. And that's one of the things that I found with working with my coach, was that it was really interesting to see the ways that having community of people at this similar area of motivation need as me, or the same level of motivation need, that we were all able to collectively get motivation from seeing each other get to the next step. And it's not necessarily like you're comparing yourself to other people, but more so that you're using the collective achievement to help propel you forward. So that's one way that I never really understood motivation in the past until I had been part of that process. And then I realized that I had been part of that process multiple times in the past. I just didn't know what it was, because in my early undergrad experience, I was part of a very high achieving group of young people who then went on to do a whole bunch of amazing things. And even now I can look at all of them, LinkedIn, blah, 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 blah. They're all like killing it in their fields. So sometimes that collective motivation, we may not realize that we're getting it because you're just part of like a group or whatever. But that is really, really something that you can explore if you think that, you're not getting that level of external motivation from your boss that you were. You still have a need for it in some way, or a comfortability with it. Now, the other thing about that is I feel like somehow we may be ignoring a lot of times our healing journey as it goes along with our entrepreneurial and our work journey, because there's times when you make a judgment of yourself and say, oh, I should be working, or I should be doing this, or now I'm not motivated. And you kind of spiral into this continual place of demotivation. And when you're lacking in that way, you might want to explore what I've heard Tasha, who's on this app. Tasha's her at and Instagram is at Rules and Rebellion, but she's really amazing. We do a lot of rooms with Tasha. And one of the things I was talking about with her in the past was like my healing stuff. And so she invited me to this workshop this weekend. And one of the terms that they use is compassionate curiosity. And what I learned from them about compassionate curiosity is that when you're in that space of judging yourself, it doesn't move you forward at all. And so you have to be able to look at that behavior and ask yourself, well, what is the root of this? And, it might be something in your past, might be something, with your family, it might be something, that a trauma or experience that just happened recently. Like there's a lot of different things, but it's important not to judge yourself, or not to criticize yourself, or not to get down on yourself, but to continue to try to learn from your lived experience as you go through it, and to do that in a way that you're still loving to yourself as you do it. So that's one thing I would say is another skill you could possibly think about if you're interested in digging into kind of the healing part of it. And then the last part I think all of us need to remember is, if you have the freedom of entrepreneurship, then you have the freedom to figure out what gives you joy. And that feels like fuck yes. Like, oh yeah, this is for me. This is totally for me. I'll know what everybody else is doing today, but I will do this. And that feeling is, when you add that fuck yes joy to your purpose, that's energy. That's what keeps you going. That's what keeps you motivated. That's what propels you forward to create really badass things. So I would say, whatever you can do to figure out what gives you joy, and helps you still stay true to your purpose and your values, that is the sweet spot for more work. So that's what I wanted to say to you. But I love you, Jose. So we modded you, and we wanted to just invite you to this conversation in a really open way. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Great points there, Wendy. I really appreciate that. You're absolutely right about that. And you know, going back to Dr. Rico's point, time, right? Time being kind of a motivating factor. You know, I've had that as a motivating factor before, right? But I always feel like there's always something else behind that. And Wendy was alluding to that as well. You know, trying to figure out what's really the base for the motivation or the lack of motivation, and finding those kind of that genesis of that really has helped me in the past and now to make sure that I stay motivated. You know, that even when I do find moments when I'm not feeling the greatest, like where do I get this motivation from, to find out what the real root cause of that is. And so I think that's really important. But again, and you hit on again the fact about lists. You know, really am a big proponent of that, making sure that we write those lists. And another thing that I kind of, you kind of alluded to, and that I also wanted to bring up as a point was the habits, you know, the routine. Jose was talking about this as well, habits and routine, and make sure that we create good habits, especially when we're starting on our entrepreneur journey. It's really easy to kind of become incapacitated by the crazy amount of choices that we have when we become entrepreneurs, right? Jose was talking about this earlier. I have gone through this myself, where you know, okay, I have the day is free. I'm an entrepreneur. I can do whatever I want, and I write a couple emails, and then I start watching a TV show. It's, you know, and sometimes we hide it under the guise of like,
I've
well,
been there.
oh, yeah, Don Rico, you know, and I'm sure this has happened to
I know
Wendy
what
as
I know
well. You know, it
exactly.
happened.
I've actually finished more Netflix series in the last like 3 months than I ever have in my life, and I don't know why. I don't even know why.
If we can get paid for watching television, I'll be like, pretty well off, So
It's funny, right? We put it in the background. We put it in the background to like kind of be that quote unquote ambient noise, that white noise, and then we start watching it, right? Even right now, y'all, even right now, I have my TV turned on for no reason. It's on mute, but I have it on, right? And so we have to be careful with that when we have those too many choices. That's why it's so important as entrepreneurs to be structured, create our structures. Because if we were formerly dependent on structures, you know, in our previous jobs, in our previous career, you know, maybe we didn't realize how important those structures were to us. And so for me, I still am kind of a quote unquote pantser, where I kind of do things by the seat of my pants, but I'm getting better at really structuring what I'm supposed to be doing, where I'm supposed to be at, and having a kind of a formalized, you know, day in, day out routine. You know, and it starts as simple as something as working out. You know, okay, you know, when you go work out and you have a set time, you're no longer saying, well, hopefully I go work out today. You know, no, you're saying, okay, I'm going to work out at 7 o'clock in the morning. You know, it's fixed, it's a goal. And even though it may seem like a silly goal, like a very small, minute goal, it's a goal nonetheless. And when you work out and you stick to that time, that's really what converts you from being from an amateur to a professional. Because professionals, you know, we stick to our deadlines, we stick to our timelines, we stick to, you know, things that we're supposed to do at the times that we set them down. And that's all part about creating good habits and good routines. So I think, so back to what Doc Rico was saying, when you write down these lists, you know, again, manifesting those lists and making sure that they're on point, you write them down. And again, the lack of, when you start making these actions, they start snowballing, they start making an effects on you. So if we are kind of paralyzed when we say, oh, I'm going to do this, or oh, I hope I'm going to do that, but we don't manifest it, what's still things up in the air at that point. And we still have an opportunity, and what I would describe as a negative opportunity, to change it again, to change it around. And oh, you know what? I can't do it now because I'm watching a movie, or oh, my friend called me, or this and that, or oh, I'm on Clubhouse, blah blah blah. Whatever the excuse is, right? But if you stick to a deadline or to a time frame, I'm sorry, and you meet it, you got to prioritize. Okay, what's more important? Is my, you know, my meeting for, and I'm gonna sit down and type out an article, or I'm going to fix this blog, or I'm going to repurpose the content from the Social Impact Level Up Club and create a podcast from it, right? And you set that time. Now you have a clear goal, and you set that time, and also you prioritized that action above all the other actions. Sure, there's times when you can readjust and do this, but what you want to do is get in the habit of committing yourself to that time and making sure that you're motivated by that. So I really appreciate Doc Rico sharing that and making sure that we do kind of understand how motivating time is. I think I saw you on Mike. Wendy, did you want to share?
Oh, no, but it did remind me one thing I didn't mention that I had written down what habits and patterns might be holding you back and might be holding you in the space of lack of motivation. But I also remembered that there is a connection also with your perfectionism and procrastination and habits on that side of like the productivity piece, because some of those habits might have actually been a response that you created to something in the past that needed to be either like you were hyper vigilant about or you needed to pay attention to and overdue. So for example, for me, I'm like the overachiever girl. I still am the overachiever girl, always have been. But that was in a space of healing. I understand that there are childhood mechanisms there that I created for myself in order to have a response that I needed. And that was like either to be seen or to feel like I had hope or feel like I had something to move forward to. So there was always this sense of healing that needs to come into the mix as well. And that's where I was going with that point is when you have the compassionate, and actually Tasha is about to come in, when you have the compassionate curiosity, why did I need to overachieve? Like, why did I needed to be perfect in this task? Or why do I feel like I needed to do this a certain way or have a certain set of deadlines or expectations for myself? And that's where that all kind of comes together. But I'll send it back to Rodrigo. And then I think Tasha's coming in a second, Rodrigo.
No, that's great, and that really that kind of I went ahead and posted the previous room, Wendy. You did a fantastic job there with the procrastination fixation, and I really encourage Dr. Rico to check it out. If hopefully he doesn't procrastinate on it and actually can check it out. But it was really cool how you kind of went through all that and described procrastination and why we're procrastinators, right? And getting down to the root causes of procrastination. We know why we procrastinate, but we still procrastinate. So there's got to be a root cause to it, and I think that that episode was really good, and going through that and making sure that we kind of talked about that. Making sure that we get that.
Hey,
Dr. Rico, go ahead, Dr. Rico.
I got to run. I'm actually going to with my wife to get her sonogram. So it's cool. I get to see the baby today.
Oh,
Just
nice.
want to share that with you guys. So I got to run and hopefully be in the next one soon.
All right, is this the
Congrats.
first
Thanks for
time?
being here.
Yeah, this is the
First
first
time?
time. Yeah, the sonogram. This is the first time.
Yeah.
Felicidades.
Gracias, gracias.
Yeah, congrats, man. All right.
So, I wanted to bring up one point that has helped me out throughout the years is finding whatever it is, however minuscule, the part of your job that excites you and just running with it. That might create momentum for you. So, for example, I love researching and I have access to all sorts of newspaper archives and so on. So on a slow day, or by that I mean a day where I'm slow to self-motivate, I might just hop on to one of these archives and search for terms regarding pieces that I'm working on. So find that one thing that really sets you off. That's it.
Oh, I like that. I like that, Jose. Going back to my days as a project engineer, working with structural concrete, I was not motivated by anything other than having a good salary. And so I knew what I was doing. I was good at it, but I didn't particularly like the work. So going through those days and having to kind of figure out the motivation that I wanted then, it was easy for me because back then I was young, where I said, "Hey, I want a good paying job," right? But that additional motivation of being there and so forth. And I did the same thing. I'm glad you touched on that, finding the little things that work. And a lot of times, what it ended up being it was the interpersonal relationships that I built with my crew, with the team, as far as the various contractors that I will work with, and the relationships therein, and finding those spots, right? Finding those moments where, hey, you know what, we have something in common, and hey, let's go get beers afterwards, and hey, let's work together to create this and do that. And those small little sources of inspiration within the work can definitely bridge the gap for those moments that you don't find that motivation. So I definitely agree with you on that regard. Thanks so much for sharing that, Jose. I see that Tasha has joined us. Tasha, I know you just joined right now, but we are talking about motivation. Where are you? And did you want to share, maybe a moment when motivation was particularly difficult for you to find, and maybe some steps or something that helped you find that motivation or get back on the track with that?
Hi, yeah, I'm sorry I wasn't here earlier. I love your guys' room on Monday. A time that I was struggling with motivation. I mean, I think that when I'm struggling with motivation, I've learned over the last several years that that usually is a sign that something's out of alignment for me. And the motivation, for all humans has to be intrinsic. We just have to find it. And in some circumstances, there's stuff you have to do, like taxes, being internally motivated. I'm not going to be excited about that process. It's just not something that I am naturally enthusiastic about. But having the relief of that is something that I do look forward to. And also, getting it done sooner each year has been something that I'm excited about celebrating because it is something that I don't enjoy doing. So the earlier I get it done, the more accomplished I feel and the more proud I am of myself. So those kinds of things are, I think, that the parts that are challenging to find motivation for, the stuff that we know we have to do, but isn't actually aligned with, our core values or something we love. It's just shit that you have to get done. But in terms of the tips, what I've learned for myself and with all of our clients and even my kids, my 15-year-old and my 12-year-old, is that the motivation piece, there's so much judgment and pressure around it a lot of times for us because we've been told that motivation is so important. And although it is important, it also wanes, right? And so we have to, because from moment to moment, hour to hour, we have different needs. And so your need to rest and your need to go after your goals, they can feel like they're competing. Those goals are competing sometimes. And so the motivation can't be the thing that we rely on, or a lot of us end up really beating ourselves up about it. For me, it's been about looking at what I've done and what's working, and then asking myself, is this effective? Is it still working the way I wanted it to? And is there a way to move out of judgment in whatever the circumstances are and move into compassion, curiosity? So when I look back and I think, oh, I should have been more motivated. If I was more motivated, I would have done this thing the right way or gotten to this goal. Oftentimes that doesn't lead to growth or expansion for me. And so I started shifting away from it being good or bad. And this is partially my own perfectionism recovery process into why didn't it work? What was making it hard? And in particular, looking at the skills I thought I should have had that I hadn't practiced or hadn't been taught, or having tools that would have made the thing easier for me to say yes to. Because the simpler and the more easy we can make the thing we want to do, in terms of like setting it up in advance or identifying that there are tools that can make it go faster so that you can have as few factors as possible as resistance, the easier it is to say yes over and over and over again. And this is something we teach in our habits course, because there's so much out there that is just misinformation about how humans work. And so that is how I've navigated motivation not being the thing I beat myself up about, but also using it in a way that's aligned with my core values and my goals. But then, circling back around to compassionate curiosity. What is this motivation that I think I'm supposed to have for this one project or this one action? Why didn't I do it? Why didn't I do it? Instead of saying, oh, I'm a jerk, or I'm lazy, or I should have worked harder. Why didn't I do it? Well, looking back, I had, a kid that was sick that I had to take care of, and I'm not going to choose not to take care of my kid. And so, or I have a chronic health condition, I had to rest that day. Otherwise I would have burnt myself out for the 3 days later. And so looking at what are the actual factors that led to not doing it and taking into consideration the human aspect of it can be really helpful. I'll pause there.
Oof. You said a lot, Tasha, and it was all dope. I really appreciate that. And it is important for us to make sure that, we do align ourselves correctly when there is a misalignment, right? Like, I don't think you characterize it that way, but when there is something that's not congruent to what we're trying to do, that's when that motivation can kind of hit us or evade us. And then we're wondering, oh man, what do I do next? What's going on here? What's not? And things feel off. And I think that's really important, and especially in these during these times right now that we're in the pandemic, right? That things have just been blown out of the water. I mean, things that were normally structured and very, I would even say rigid, and we all followed these, parameters. Everything has changed. Everything has changed in the pandemic. So the last item that I want to share with everybody is a article that I read, a very good article, and it's titled "How the Pandemic Killed Your Motivation in 6 Simple Ways to Get It." And I really like this because this definitely hit home for me. Again, building my own business during the pandemic has been something of a challenge, not necessarily from a business standpoint. I've actually been what I would consider successful on my end, but what's been really challenging to me is setting everything up, and not even like websites and all that, just like having that routine. And it's because a lot of these cues that I used to have at work, right? Getting up on time, making sure that I get there at work at XYZ time, checking this, doing that, checking my emails and this and that, blah, blah. I used to have a very nice little schedule set up at work. And now I have to do it at home where I have all these other factors that kind of come into play. So I think it's really important that everybody understands that how maybe your situation has changed because of the pandemic. And I can get into those factors in a little bit, but I wanted to welcome Santiago to the stage. And Santiago, I know you just came in, and I know you heard Tasha, but I've been asking everybody here, and I'll ask you the same question. Motivation, where are you is the topic. What do you do, Santiago, when you don't have that motivation? What has there been a time where you've kind of been without motivation, and how do you work with that? And how did you find your groove back?
What's up, man? Thanks for the space, Rodrigo, and thank you so much for leading today's meeting. Yeah, man, this is really good. I remember last year during the pandemic. I'm sorry, 2020. Jesus, can't believe it's been that far. I think it was like April or something that I think we were told, yeah, we'll be back in the office after like a couple of weeks, right? And you guys shouldn't worry about anything. So I remember being on my couch like in mid-April, and we were stuck. We were stuck at home. So I'm like, damn, this sucks. Like I've never been one to sit at home and just wait around. So like I'm not even joking. I think that's the closest I've ever felt to depression. And I remember just telling myself, I gotta get out of this funk. Like I remember laying in my couch one day, and I was like, man, I gotta get out of this funk. Like I can't be here. So I kind of just started thinking, I'm like, what can I do to reinvent myself to kind of get out there? And I've never been one of to have Zoom meetings or anything like that. I've never been comfortable. I've been comfortable with one-on-one interaction. That's who I am. That's what I do. So I just remember, telling myself, what's like the hardest point I ever had in life? And I think back to 2009 when I lost everything. Like literally, I lost my restaurant. I lost, I was going through through a divorce, through a really bad separation, where it was, and on top of that, I didn't even have a green card, so I was like just screwed all over the place. So um, I remember just telling myself that, like, man, you've been in like really bad situations. You've been in really crappy places in life where And I put it into perspective. I'm like, I'm a little bit older now. I have a degree. I have a wonderful person that I share my life with. Um, this isn't bad. This is okay. I mean, I just put it into for me. I just put it into perspective, and I thought about it. I'm like, my daughter at that point was in seventh grade. And for me, my dream has always been, and this is what I work for constantly, for me to be able to, my daughter say, Daddy, I got into I got into Columbia. I want her to be like Wendy. Like I want her to, and for her to say, Daddy, I got into Columbia, but I'm shy. A couple of scholarships only cover me half, so I need help to pay this stuff, and that's what I kind of like. That's what kind of like motivated me and got me out of that funk. I just thought about my kid, and the impact that I want to have on her, and so that's my daughter's always gotten me out the funk, and that's why I always tell people like my daughter has no idea, but her before the age of 15, even because she's not even 15 yet, she's pulled me you know her just being in my life has pulled me out of some really bad situations. So yeah, man, I just putting things into perspective and reevaluating what I do, and that keeps me going, man. Hello, you guys get me?
Yes, yes. I'm so
It's
sorry,
all good, man.
Shotgun. My
I was
phone
like,
shut off.
my signal's going low, so I was like, oh.
No, no, no. My phone, the screen went off, and I had to type it, whatever. But no, no, that's great, man. And I really, again, some really good insight there because we do have to find that, right? And I think we have to find the motivation somewhere. And when you find it in somebody, your relationship, for example, with your kids, right? Sometimes you can be at the lowest point in your life and you're still motivated because somebody is looking up to you, and even though I've never, for my job, my career, that's never been applicable to me. I know that for my behavior, that's definitely something that I've always been cognizant of, and I've always tried to act accordingly. That way my boys see my behavior and I model the behavior that I want them to do. I just can't talk it, right? I don't want to just say like, "Hey, be kind and compassionate and apologize when you need to, and do the right thing and don't be this and that." I can't just say that because I remember my dad saying that, but he was completely the opposite, and I didn't learn the correct behavior, and I had to struggle through that. And so by modeling the behavior that I want my boys to do, I'm not just talking it, I'm also walking it. And so I totally understand that perspective that you have and that motivation that you get from that, and it's very critical, especially when we are in our lowest points. You know what I'm saying? I think our relationships are so critical to our motivation. And in fact, to tie into the point of the article, that is one of the three tenets, if you will, for making sure that we stay motivated. When we stay motivated, a lot of times it drops whenever we feel that there's a deficit in three key areas. And one of them you mentioned is your relationships, right? And the other two are your autonomy and your competence. And so it's really important that when that happens, that especially during the pandemic, where things just wipe things out, where maybe you used to get this motivation from XYZ, when you're not getting it now because the pandemic changed things. Maybe you were motivated by the relationships you had at work, but now you don't go to work. You work from home. How do you manage that? How do you resolve all that? And so this article goes into detail about those, and I want to go ahead and just name those six steps. And these are research backed steps, ways that you can actually help with your motivation during the pandemic, but just even outside the pandemic. And then after that, I'll definitely go to Cynthia and ask her the same question as well. But the first one is creating daily rituals. And again, we've talked about that here, making sure that you set up these structures so that you have these little micro goals, these mini goals to meet, right? Whether it's working out, whether it's setting us a time to, write an article, time to call up clients, catch up with them, and so forth. Setting up these daily rituals, it does help, and it's basically giving yourself that self discipline that you need, and thus also your motivation, to make sure that you do those things. Number two would be setting up routine cues. And I'm reading again from the article. Feel free to click the link on the very top of this room, y'all. and it'll take you to the article, and you can read these art. You can save this article and kind of have them there whenever you need to revisit it. But one of the second one is set up routine cues, and it says during the pandemic, cues that would typically prompt you to do something, they have been disrupted, right? So, for example, I was talking about earlier, like I would get to work and I already knew, hey, I'm gonna type in some emails, and then at 8:30, I'm gonna go to my, to the breakfast lounge, make my oatmeal, set up my drink, my tea, my shake, and boom, get back to my desk. 8:45, bang out some more emails, do a spreadsheet, blah 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 blah. All that stuff changed. All that stuff changed during the pandemic. And so when your routine cues are disrupted, you feel disrupted. You feel like everything's kind of just all over the place. And so it's really important that we set up those routine cues, whatever they may be. And so another one, the third one would be reward yourself in the right way. Rewards can increase your intrinsic motivation or desire to do an activity. And essentially, you have to pair an activity with something that you find enjoyable to do during or right after the activity. So sometimes we reward ourselves, and but we got to reward ourselves the right way, right? And even something as simple as like, hey, I just got an email done at work. I would probably talk to somebody and say, hey, look, this happened, and we kind of give ourselves pats on the back and so forth. And now when I, for example, land a client, I might actually like, hey, I did something good, and then I'll, I don't know, go grab a bag of chips or something. I don't know. There's nobody I can high five over here, right? But that's also another thing that I want to mention is making sure that you have the right team around you, right? And so finding the right squad, the right folks that are going to keep you motivated, and you can share those kind of little mini victories, so critical, so crucial to making sure that you stay motivated. And before I share the rest of them, because I want to make sure I spend time with everybody. Oh, Cynthia's on the phone. I'll pass it to Cynthia in a little bit as soon as she gets off the phone, but I'll continue with the list. The next one is making room for moments of positivity. Again, super important. We are definitely people are more likely to criticize things, right? And so you will get these feedback, this negative feedback, where somebody may not like what you did, or you get an email that says, "Hey, blah blah blah, da da da," and you're getting this negative feedback. But it's really important to make moments for positivity and gain those positive emotions as well. So again, like I was suggesting earlier, finding the right squad, finding the right people to surround yourself with, right? That you can share these daily victories, these wins, or when you're having a tough time and you know they're going to pull through for you. A lot of people may say, "Oh, it's corny. Oh, come on, and this and that, blah blah blah." But there's a difference between good positivity and toxic positivity, right? And so we don't want to venture into toxic positivity where we just ignore our feelings and just say, "Oh, you can do it. Push through. Push." No, no, no. You want real friendship, real critique, real feedback. Hey, you know what? I understand what you're going through. Man, here's what I did, or hey, this and that, or have you thought about this, and blah blah blah. That right positivity where people are going to support you and give you the el ánimo that you really need at that time. I think that's really important as well. And then the last thing that I'll say, the last one on the list is actually don't to be too hard on yourself. It's really easy, especially in this time and age right now, to be hard on ourselves because we really don't have a lot of barometers out there, especially in the pandemic, especially for entrepreneurs like Wendy and myself, and even folks like Jose and Santiago and Cynthia, that we are in a different environment right now because of the pandemic. We have to make room for that, make room for these factors that are out of our control. Typically, I would be out and about right now, probably shaking hands with folks, networking out there in the offline world, right? I'm trying to meet folks and this and that, but I can't. I can't do that right now just because of all the restrictions that are going on. I'm actually isolating myself because I was exposed a couple days. All of these things, these factors are all contributing to making things, just seem awkward, different, and out of the normal routine that I usually would have had. And I can easily be feel less motivated to do the work that I need to do. But if I give myself an allowance for that and just say, hey, you know what? I can't control that. You know what I'm saying? So why am I going to let that interfere with me and how motivated or unmotivated I feel? That's one approach that I take. Or, hey, I'm going to list out things, even though I can't shake somebody's hand. Well, you know what? I can give them a call. I can hit up their LinkedIn profile. I can send them a text. I can do, this and that. So that's really important. to go there. And I just saw Santiago actually just got his red balloon.
How did you just get your red balloon right now? I was like, did that
Wow.
just happen? Wow. What a
I
small
guess it's
bit.
my birthday. I just realized that.
What? It literally, I was looking at the phone and the balloon just popped up, Santiago. It was like magic.
That was impressive.
I think Clubhouse was like, oh, wait a minute, it's his birthday.
Wait, so Santiago, did you join Clubhouse right at 3:03 1 year ago today?
You know what? I'm thinking like I'm now that you say that, I was in my office picking something up last year, and my boy, he was, who introduced me to the app. Again, nobody's in the office. We were just going passing by to pick stuff up. He goes, and I remember I was rushing because I pick up my daughter at 3 o'clock, and I was trying to get out of there. He's like, "Hey man, I'm gonna send you this link for this Clubhouse thing for this application. It's an audio only thing." And I'm like, yeah, sure, send it to me. And I remember waiting for my daughter at 3 o'clock outside of school, and I'm like, let me see what this is all about. So I don't know, maybe at 3:03 I sense admit that it's like officially my birthday. I don't know.
Yeah, that must be it then. That must be it. I'm sorry, it just really freaky that the balloon just came out of nowhere.
That was really,
The
I know, I
balloon-
was like, what had just happened? This is like it.
yeah, it's just like the balloon just popped up, right? So
Yeah,
I
might as
was
well come out
born.
of the sewer. It just came out of nowhere. I was like, what the hell?
that's great. That's great. And then one last tip before we go ahead and start closing down the room. The last one is know your triggers. And I think this is a really important one because, and from the article, it says everyone feels unmotivated sometimes. So it's important to recognize what your triggers are and adjust accordingly to help get your motivation back. And so I will share very quickly for me, I know when somebody's being negative with me, or I can feel that negativity, and I have two options to do. Either one, confront it, if I feel like, hey, I want the relationship to survive, I want the relationship to be right. I don't have to be right in the relationship. So let me, make an overture and say, hey, you know what, let's fix this XYZ. Or I abstain from it. I just say, hey, you know what, I'm gonna give it some time. I'm not here for that because I know that it'll trigger me. And so I think it's really important to know our triggers to make sure that, hey, if we start recognizing somebody's being negative, right? Somebody or something happens that we know, oh my God, this reminds me of something, it's going to mess up, kind of help alleviate those factors by diminishing them or at least, or hopefully being able to eliminate them by knowing your triggers and knowing what could possibly happen if you don't eliminate that trigger. So if I know that, hey, this person, I don't like this person, they text me and I still text back to them, and then they send me something or they call me and I call them and they say something. Well, at that point I should have known already. I already know that, hey, this is going this way. Maybe just give it some time or find the resolution and resolve the conflict as quickly as can. So I just wanted to share this article with y'all. Again, it's called "How the Pandemic Killed Your Motivation and 6 Simple Ways to Get It Back." With that said, though, I really appreciate everybody that was in the room today that helped shared, their motivation, their struggles with motivation, and also ways to kind of combat that. I want to give an opportunity for everybody just to share some final thoughts before we end up closing the room. Again, I want to thank Wendy. Even though Wendy, Santiago, and I, even though Santiago and I are here, and she's made us a part of this, it was really Wendy that really kind of created the Social Impact Level Up Club, and she's done a phenomenal job with the club and also with just growing the club and making sure that folks understand what the purpose is of the club. And it's been very consistent. And I just wanted to thank her because this is a motivational thing for me too. I need this type of a club to make sure that I stay in line with who I want to be as an entrepreneur. So again, Wendy, just wanted to thank you for that, making this club up and letting me kind of be your co-pilot.
Yeah, thanks for hosting today. No, this has been a great conversation. Super appreciate you for coming up, Jose, and happy birthday, Santiago, who's on the phone. But it was a great conversation. So thanks for being here today, guys.
Appreciate it, Wendy.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Social Impact Level Up podcast. From me, Wendy V, and my co-host Rodrigo Bravo, we sincerely appreciate your follows, your likes, your subscribes, and your shares. Make sure that you're reaching out to us on social media. We'd love to hear from you. Have a wonderful day, and remember, keep changing the world.